What's happening, everyone? My partners Ian's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone? And welcome to Al Chile Boxing Talk. Got the homies with me, Nopal Boxeanos and George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're glad that you're here, man. And we're going to get right into it. Well, you know, boxing's been a little slow as far as high-profile fights, but, I mean, we got some good topics to get into. We're going to discuss whether Undisputed, when it becomes disputed, is still good, and if Undisputed is still the greatest thing of all time. We're also going to be covering Danny Garcia versus Mauricio Herrera, the controversial rescore. Canelo versus Garcia having a little bit of a beef. And then the long count fight, 1927, the fight of the year. Jack Dempsey versus Gene Tunney. What's happening, fellas?
Good morning. What's up to you guys?
Feeling good, man.
What's up, bros?
What's happening? Want to give a shout out to the Don who's in the house. Thanks for joining us, brother. Well, dude, let's get into it, man. You know, I'll tell you, Undisputed, it's important, right? I mean, everybody's been talking about how like Undisputed is the high mark that everybody should try to attain to, you know, but I've noticed that the dialogue has shifted a little bit, you know, and it all started as it usually does with Canelo Alvarez. Okay. Everybody wanted Undisputed. Okay. And Canelo went for it, but you did have those naysayers saying, hey, well, you know, I'd really like to see the Benavidez fight, or some people were squirming. They had to give Canelo credit, right? Because Undisputed was the most important thing. But I mean, a lot of people wanted to see this Benavidez fight. Some people were still vocal that, oh, Canelo only went up to 168 and cleaned up the division because Benavidez wasn't around. Any thoughts on how Canelo went and ended up being undisputed at 168 pounds?
I'll start a little bit. So I guess I guess it starts right when you're a real high profile fighter. They want to see you fight the best guys. So from 160 to 168, they asked, okay, the high profile fight they've been asking for from Canelo has been Triple G. We finally got it. We got 2 fights out of it. We got the 3rd fight on the way out of it. Now he goes to 168. They see he's at 168. And again, you know, back at 160, they're asking for Charlo. They're asking for Andre, even Andre at 154. They've been asking for all these fights. And of course, to a casual and to maybe like a you know, you got 1 foot in, 1 foot out as a hardcore and a casual. You are asking for those fights, but as a hardcore, like you appreciate what Canelo's doing along the way, especially once he got to 168. Now, here's the thing: is, you know, if you're gonna have your negative to say about Canelo, oh well, you know, he went after you know, Plant, he went after Saunders, he went after the other 2 champions, Felding. At 168, if you're gonna complain that those weren't the guys that you wanted to see him fight against, like, I mean, also if it was somebody else as Jamal, let's say Jamal went and followed this route, or Benavidez followed this route, like I would want the same, you know, high praises that people are giving Canelo for these same guys as well. But we know how it is. We know that these guys have nothing better to do than complain. And yes, it's evident that we see it on YouTube and all social media platforms. There is race involved. I mean, there's no way around it. You know, if your favorite fighter isn't black or if your favorite fighter isn't Mexican, like there's always negative about it. But for me, yes, before I understood what Canelo was doing, I was asking for those fights. I was asking for the Charlo, asking for the Benavidez, asking for the Andrade. I was asking for those fights. But what you saw him do at 168, it was like the perfect road to becoming undisputed. Any one of those guys could have easily have done that same thing. Benavidez, if he didn't have, you know, the cocaine or losing it on the scale, like he could have easily went after the same road that Canelo did at 168, and I'm sure he would have gotten praises as well. So, you know, it could be unfair sometimes to what the accomplishments that Canelo has done. Again, it's not his fault that these 4 guys had these belts, and to a casual didn't really know who these guys were. Of course, you got them calling them the Euro bums, but then again, look, at the end of the day, these guys are the same as Canelo. They put on gloves, they train, you know, they do all the necessary things to do to get inside that ring. So for people to not understand that, it is disrespectful to a fighter when people call these guys Euro bums or whatever. Like, these guys won belts as well. So again, Canelo did what he had to do at 168. He got all the belts. He did it in very fast fashion. And now you're seeing that the Undisputed is, I'm not saying it's easier to get, but you see that maybe it's just the way it just lined out, that at 140 or 135, you see some of these guys that are able to get these 4 belts, not easily, but these guys are starting to challenge themselves. And then, that's my praise for the Undisputed that I really like about it on this side of it. So it's a beautiful thing. If these guys can accomplish that, great, and again, if there's negative, like, make sure you're saving that negative if you're going to be one of those guys that's going to use, if the fighter is black or the fighter is European or if the fighter is Mexican or whatever he is, like, you got to, I want those same critiques or the same talk, the same way that you're talking about Canelo. Like, I want to see that same way for them too.
Damn, I co-sign all of that, George. Nopal, you got anything to add to the way Canelo went undisputed and the people who cry about the fact that maybe Canelo did it when Benavidez wasn't a champion? What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to start off by saying that, the people that always say, hey, Undisputed's like the best thing out there, bro, get the fuck out of here with this shit. You guys are annoying as fuck, for reals, because it is good. Don't get me wrong. It is good, but there's so many holes in being undisputed or going for undisputed. Basically, what I'm saying is there's holes because the guys that have the belt aren't always the best dudes, and we know that. That sometimes certain guys get a chance to get a belt and they hold on to it and they don't fight the dudes. We live in the era where you got a million excuses to not fight other people. Basically, if you can't blame it on your boss, Al Heyman, or or Bob Arum for not letting you fight, there's just so many excuses. And then you could say, hey, the other guy's pricing himself out. I mean, there's a list of excuses these days that a lot of fighters get away with for not fighting certain guys. And, what we have to appreciate with Canelo is that prior to him even thinking about going undisputed, he would start off the division with a bang and just fight the best dude altogether. We saw that at 154, he fought Floyd. He fought Trout. These were guys that were already proven. And then as soon as he gets to 160, right away he fights Triple G. In fact, that was his first. I think that was his first official fight at the 160 pound limit. Because we know that he won the belt versus Cotto, but that was at a catch weight of 155. So this is prior to somebody getting in Canelo's head and saying, hey, well, you can go undisputed. And then what happens as soon as he wants to go undisputed? Now people start complaining that he doesn't want to. They start discrediting him because he has no interest now in fighting Benavidez, and he has no interest in fighting Charlo. And for the amount of discredit that he gets for not fighting these guys, it's laughable because both of these guys, I think they're good fighters and everything, especially Benavidez, but the truth is that they have laughable resumes. For you to try to discredit a Canelo that has so many names on his resume, has proven himself time and again, every time, even, just to prove himself, he even went up to 175 and fought a dangerous fighter like Bivol. You know what I mean? He just continued. He's already proven that he's not scared of anybody, but, for people to still discredit him, it's just laughable. And, as far as the undisputed thing, I think it's good, but it has holes in it. It just depends the situation with the fighter. If you're going into a division that has 4 killers, 4 worthy opponents, then it's the best thing in the world. But superior to that will always be for you to just fight the best guys in the division, whether they got a belt or not. But at the same time, you know what I'm saying? We're in a business. I mean, it's a sport it's realistically it's a business. So not every fighter is in a position to do what they want or whatever and fight, the best dude. Sometimes it's a heavy risk. So in reality, we can ask so much of fighters. you know.
Excellent note, Paul. I want to give a shout out to What Reputu's in the house. He says that Canelo is still #1 pound for pound. Also want to give a shout out to Maestro Ah. That guy's cooking. Had a great show yesterday, man. He had a great show this morning. The way this guy can produce is amazing, man. So I hope you guys all check him out. Hope to have him on the show soon. All right, man. So let's go on to the next little topic here. Inoue versus Fulton. Now, this fight, it was kind of talked about a little bit. Now, that would mean that Inoue would have to move up, right? So, I mean, to you, what would be more important? Having these guys clean out their respective divisions, maybe, and then clashing? Or would it be better for their resume and their legacy to get this fight going right now? What would be better in your mind? George, what do you think?
I mean, we obviously know the fight that we want to see at that division with Fulton is MJ. I know everybody's calling for that. So I would say first and foremost, I would like to see the MJ and Fulton. I mean, after seeing what MJ could do with 2 weeks ago against Rios, you saw a little bit of adversity. You saw skill. You saw even in him being up into the 12th round. Like he went still after the kill, like he was fighting like this fight, like everything depended on it, and that's what I love to see. Like I've never really seen MJ fight, and of course, Maestro being in the building, like he's kind of the one that kind of put it in my head too. MJ, him and Kenny, they're always calling his name, same like Aoka. So once I heard the name MJ, I went saw some highlights, and I was excited to see him actually fight on the Rios. I mean on the BAM on the BAM undercard, which was good to see. So I mean, yes, this fight will definitely be made, and this is definitely the fight that should be made eventually. I maybe begin at the end of this year, beginning of 2023, whichever way it comes. I mean, no matter who these guys fight leading up to each other, like they're definitely going to win. They should be winning their fights. So it would be a toss-up, I guess, to see how MJ and Fulton play out first. But this is a fight I would love to see. It would really show where Inoue really is as far as skill. I know I've done a couple episodes on the Inoue and Donaire. I know people are like, oh, well, Donaire was older. Yeah, he was older, but he went like I would say maybe like the last 3 to 5 fights that he went didn't really go to decision, knockouts against guys that should have posed some kind of a threat or a competition. But would we be saying the same thing if Donaire actually put up a better fight in the rematch? Would it be giving the praises to Inoue that he should be getting, or would we be saying, hey, you know what, Inoue maybe isn't who we thought he was, because look at what an older Donaire did. So same thing, like when you have a guy that's coming up, like Boots, for instance, yes, he's blowing these guys out early, less than the 2 rounds, knocking them out, but that's exactly what he's doing against that level of competition. It just happened to be when Inoue and Donaire fought in this rematch, it was just that time. It was just the fight for the right time for Inoue to do exactly what he was supposed to do. And you saw the adjustments. There was, in the first fight, he, it took him 12 rounds. He did suffer the orbital bone. It broke his orbital bone. Still was able to fight through that. I think maybe it was like the 3rd or 4th round. I don't remember which round it was, but it was definitely in the first quarter of the fight. Continue to fight to the very end and pulled that out, which I believe he did. Rematch, came out. You knew exactly what to expect in against Donaire. But I mean, this is a good fight to see as well. But I think for me first, I'd rather see the MJ and Fulton.
Yeah, and I agree with that for Fulton's case, and because it's 2 different situations, for these 2 fighters. Michael Fulton actually has guys that he could still fight there, but in Inoue's case, the way he's been blowing everybody out in his division, it's just like you reach to a certain point where you're like, okay, what's next? You're just gonna keep fighting these guys that you made look like nothing, He's put a different level on the division, so the fans are gonna be like, okay, so if you're pound for pound #1 now show us that you're willing to take a weight disadvantage just a little bit, you know what I mean? So In Inoi's case, I think yes, that would be a very good test for him to move up a little and fight Fulton. But for Fulton, I just like George said, he has other guys he could be fighting, so it's not that important for him to try to challenge a smaller guy, as it is for Inouye to go up there and try to fight somebody like Fulton.
Excellent thoughts, No Paul. I want to give a shout out to D Style Boxing, who's in the house listening while he's driving in. He says that Inoue has guys at 115 that can move up, and that Inoue is not a giant at 118. Thank you, brother. And today I happen to be wearing my Hispanics Causing Panic shirt. You know what I'm saying? Shit. All right, man. And here's this next little thing I want to talk about as far as Undisputed maybe being the greatest thing of all time. Maybe not so much anymore. Shakur Stevenson. All right. So now we know that now he's the Ring Magazine champion. He beat the second best, or who might have been ranked number one before that, Oscar Valdez, right? The two best fought. Now Shakur is a unified champion, okay? And people started salivating at the idea of him possibly moving up to 135, not cleaning out the division. And everybody seemed pretty excited about the prospects of him going up, facing like a Tank Davis or a Loma, or going against the undisputed champion, Devin Haney. But that doesn't really seem to be too much of an option anymore because Shakur's not going to do either of those. He's actually going to go and fight Conceição, but that's a whole nother story, right? So I guess what I want to ask is, as far as what Shakur's doing currently, what do you think about his path? Should he be trying to go undisputed? Should he be moving up? What do you think about the Conceição fight, George?
I like the Conceição fight. I think in the future, yes, 135, as long as everybody there is where they're at, Devin Haney, Tank Davis, Vasil still in there. I mean, there's still some guys that are in that division. A Conceição fight is actually really good because, I mean, Conceição, he possesses not just coming forward, but he can actually box. But of course, I'm going to favor Shakur in that one, and I would favor him pretty much against most of everybody at that 135. I guess as far as where I see him in the future, I think like his peak weight might be maybe 140, 147. I at least I think he's a pretty big kid for 130. I know he's fighting at 130, but you saw how he looked against Valdez, and Valdez isn't a big guy, but you can just see the body frame.
Sure.
Night of the fight. So I think for me, I think his peak prime would probably be maybe like 140, 147. So the Conceição fight isn't a bad fight. It's a very good fight. It should be pretty competitive, I think, pretty early on, especially when you got two technicians as themselves. But I'm favoring Shakur in this one, of course. So I'm fine with it if he fights maybe two more times at 130. 135 is the next step. I mean, undisputed. I know Nopal was just talking about it. Some of the fighters with the bouts in those divisions, are a little bit lesser. They are lesser champions. They're not like the killers or the giants that you necessarily talk about that are holding belts. So that would be something maybe he can consider is getting all the belts at 130, then going up to 135. But for me, in all reality, I think maybe two more fights at 130. Not worry about the belts at 130. And then I'll go to 135 where all the names are at.
All right. So undisputed at 130, maybe not so important. Thank you, George. Nopal, what do you think about all this, brother?
I gotta say, man, that's a great fight, the Conceição fight. A long time ago, I distinctly remember thinking and also saying that that would be a good fight for him. And, I'm super glad that that's the first guy off the bat that, he's going to fight right away. You know what I mean? Because he did put Valdez through a bunch of shit. And, the guy is quick, man. And he's a great fighter, Conceição. So that's probably one of the best challenges that he has at that division. So I'm happy for that. But after that, that's when I'm going to be looking at it like, what the heck, time to move up, and fight Lomachenko, who's in the same promotional company, that would be a good fight too. So there's a lot of fights there for Shakur. So that was a good point, you asking about the undisputed thing. I don't really think it's a big deal for him to try to get undisputed. I actually think it's kind of a waste of time trying to unify all that at that weight class. I think right after the Conceição fight, he might as well just, might as well just move up. But if he wants to make history and be undisputed, then that's good too. I just hope he can do it in a timely fashion. You know what I mean? So we don't waste too much time with these other fights that don't really matter.
Man, great points, fellas. And looks like D-Style's on the road. We understand if you can't text, man. It looks like the Don's doing his own thing in the streets and he's listening in. Can't text because he's busy. Well, we're glad you're here, brother. Just the same. All right, here's the next thing I wanted to touch base about. Josh Taylor. Now, this is interesting. We have an undisputed champion who was undisputed champion. He vacated a belt. I believe it's the WBA. And he couldn't come to terms with making a fight against, I think it was Cepeda, right? So then he vacated the WBC belt. All right. And so now the reason he vacated the WBC belt is because he wants to fight Jack Catterall, who many people think beat Taylor. And it was a controversial fight. I personally didn't find it to be very controversial, but a lot of people did. Okay. So I want to know your thoughts. Okay. A champion who unifies all the belts, right? Possibly loses, right? But gets the gift decision. Okay. Then vacates a belt so that he can get a rematch. Like, to me, like, this is the reason that I thought that Undisputed wasn't the greatest thing of all time. Like, there's too many scenarios where, it can get muddy. Now, we're going to see Josh Taylor, a unified champion, still the ring, still ranked number 1, fight Catterall in a rematch, but now he doesn't hold all 4 belts, okay? And then in the meantime, Cepeda versus Ramirez has been officially ordered, and it looks like it's going through. It looks like it was already prepared anyways for them to fight for the vacant WBC belt. So, Undisputed becoming disputed, or is Josh Taylor still the man no matter what? George, what do you think?
It sounded like I could see where the theme of today's episode has been, with Undisputed talk. And I mean, I've been really busy. So if some of the guys in the chat like D Styles, I'm sorry if I haven't reached out or answered you back. I just saw you messaged me, man, like super busy. My time's usually, I haven't even done a show in 2 weeks. So please don't think I'm trying to avoid, and not just the people, but also like boxing news. Like, I really haven't been able to I haven't been able to really keep up with what's going on. Just, some of the stuff that we like in our little group chat, that we have with Chicano and Nopal and Sean and Run PMC. Like, we're sending each other pretty current stuff. So that's my current news that I'm up to. I didn't know that Taylor vacated to be able to get that shot at Catterall. Kind of shows maybe the importance of the belts. Maybe they're not so important. I mean, I don't know what the technicality was. I mean, should he been able to still get a rematch with all the belts, is this like a overall bigger picture? As I'm sitting here just thinking about it now that he vacated that belt, now you have Cepeda Ramirez. Is that maybe another fight in the future? Like you said, right? They couldn't get the Cepeda and Taylor, so maybe let's have Cepeda and Ramirez fight, and then their own little tournament style, whatever it is, and maybe the winner gets Catterall or Taylor. So it's really hard to say. I really don't know, Don, if it's called ducking or not. I mean, he's fighting the guy that people are saying that he lost to, or that he robbed against. So that I wouldn't really say necessarily call that a ducking if he's going after the guy that he wants, that he just had a controversial win against. So I think I would have to look a little further into exactly what this is, or maybe there's something that we got to read between the lines why he vacated this belt to get a Catterall rematch, and then now the vacated bout is getting fought between Ramirez and Cepeda. So that's what I got to say.
Yeah, like you said, man, you kind of have to think about it, because it's like, well, what's a real champion? Is Undisputed a real champ? I think what Josh Taylor's doing makes him a real champ. I think that everybody should applaud him and realize that these are all just trinkets. But that's my opinion. I've been on that side of the road, or that side of the street, or whatever you want to call it. Like, and there's going to be more scenarios in the future where we're going to realize that Undisputed isn't really the most important thing. No, Paul, what do you think about this whole Josh Taylor debacle and the fact that Ramirez and Cepeda are going to be fighting for a vacant WBC belt that Taylor had to drop to fight Catterall in a rematch?
See, I don't really get it. You know what I mean? If I was a fighter, this is what I'd probably do. I'd once I get all 4 belts, I would immediately drop them all and just hold on to maybe the ring. Well, you hold on to the ring, because you're already considered lineal champ, you know, by default, because you beat all the guys and you're the man in the division. So I'd probably hold on to one of the belts, maybe that whatever sanctioning bodies I have more pull with, which would probably be the WBC. So I'd hold on to one of the belts, and you're already lineal champ, and you're the man at that division. The guys that get the other 3 belts, they're going to be basically paper champs, you know, that are given a vacant opportunity. And then they can come see the lineal champ eventually, you know, when they get their shot. And then you don't got to pay all these sanctioning fees, you know. Instead, we got guys that run into problems like Josh Taylor. I think they had a messed up ass purse bid where he was going to get paid hell a little bit. So, of course, he's not going to go for that belt because guess what? He's not going to want to fight for like $200,000 or $300,000. What? You're going to pay most of those in sanctioning fees? The other sanctioning bodies ain't even going to want to go for that either because, of course, they're not going to get their usual pay either. So, you know, it's a whole mess with having so many belts. You know, if you look at a guy like Fury, he has the right idea. He's just, you know, he's just fighting the best champs, basically, and he's not even caring about taking belts or anything like that. And if you really think about his career, you know, if, you know, all he really has to do is beat Usyk and that his career's a wrap. He'll probably be considered, they're already calling him one of the best heavyweights of all times, you know what I'm saying? And he's only ever had one belt, to be honest, you know? He's only had well, I guess right now he has the WBC and then he has the other belt, whatever, you know, belt he had, you know. But he hasn't really had that many belts, you know.
Well, when he beat Klitschko, he was a 3-belt champ.
Yeah, but because he got those belts, but then I forget what other belt he had, but he never made it an issue to just get all the belts. He's never even mentioned Undisputed, probably, you know what I mean? So like I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that mainly he's just trying to beat the best champs, and that's probably the best. For me, that's the best approach, you know what I mean? If you think that there's a champ out there that could beat you or whatever, or like a high-stake fight, you know, with like a risky fight, and then you beat that champ, that's, to me, that's way superior than just collecting a bunch of belts, you know?
I want to give a shout out to JC who's in the house. Thanks for joining us, brother. And, you know, I think it would be remiss if we did not mention the fact that poor Regis Prograis out in the cold. He wants to know how the fuck are 240-pound titles vacant, and I'm not fighting for any. George, if I recall correctly, I mean, you resonate with this, right? You feel bad for Prograis and his situation.
Yeah, I like Regis, man. I mean, yes, he had his shot against Josh Taylor. Came up a little short. I mean, it was a damn good fight. I mean, why not? Why isn't he not? He's up there. I mean, he's up there in the 140 division. I feel like you should. I don't know what it is. I mean, is it who he signed? Didn't he sign a boxer?
Yeah, I think so, bro. He signed with the wrong fucking place, and they can't even get him no fights or nothing.
Damn, poor dude, man.
So
I would love to see him. I would love to see him at least get. I mean, okay. Again, you know, scenarios in my head. Maybe he's in his. They include him now. He gets the winners, Zepeda and Ramirez. I mean, at least that's what I would want to see. Like, again, he should be fighting for one of these belts, man. Regis is definitely the Rougarou, the real Rougarou of that division.
Yeah, but he signed with the wrong spot, so he ain't getting no fights, bro.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, and you know, I feel like with this fight, like I think Prograis would be like a fresh entry into like a title shot. Like Zepeda Ramirez, well, we've seen it. It's kind of a retread. Like, you know, I don't know. I think if one of them had gone and fought Prograis, man, it would have been sweet, you know. And to be honest, I'm kind of forgetting about Prograis. It's been a while since he's been relevant, and it's a shame that can happen to somebody who's actually hungry. I think he needs to figure his shit out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely got to get him in there. Get him in the mix, man. You'd make it interesting at that division.
Oh, yeah. All right, man. Well, I want to move on to this next subject. Well, Canelo and Ryan Garcia are having a spat, okay? And we're going to cover it. And I've told myself, you know, that every time we have to talk about Ryan Garcia, I'm going to feature one of his baby mamas.
First off, bitch, mind your business. Bad bitch.
Man, That's his current baby mama. She's fine. Dre Celine, you can find her on Instagram. Okay, but now let's get to talking some boxing. Okay, so this is what's going on with them. Okay, so they're exchanging quotes here, right? It says here, Canelo says, "I don't really think Ryan Garcia can beat Gervonta Davis, not yet. If he put his mind in boxing, try to learn everything, he could do lots of things. He has talent, right?" And then Ryan Garcia claps back, like the young people like to say. He says, "I don't know why, but I feel like Triple G is going to have an amazing fight for some reason, somehow. Of course, the obvious pick is Canelo, but I don't know why I have a feeling that Triple G is going to have the performances of his lifetime. I'm going to say Triple G wins." And then Canelo responds saying, he's just mad. He's no more on the team. He's just a little kid. My advice is to focus on your career. Win a world title first, then talk about other people because you've accomplished nothing. Okay, now there's a quote that Ryan Garcia had. He said, well, I don't have a Matthew Hatton to fight right now, which I thought, damn, I haven't heard anybody throw Matthew Hatton in Canelo's face in a long time. Now, we were all there, so I want to hear what y'all have to say about that. And then Floyd Mayweather chimed in, right? He says, you see, Ryan Garcia, first he's praising Canelo. He wants to learn from Canelo. In Canelo's training camp, now it's all hate. Accomplish what Canelo accomplished, then he can speak bad about him. So, okay, so, I mean, it looks like there's a rift going on. George, what are your thoughts on all this?
It's a novella, man. It's a novella, boxing novella. I guess where I could start is, of course, we know it started when the breakup. Canelo really wasn't taking shots at Garcia in the beginning, right? He just pretty much was saying that it had to come from Garcia to put the work in the gym. I mean, why are you going to sit around and wait for Reynoso, right? I mean, yeah, Reynoso's your trainer, but also you're a grown ass man. Like you can take care of the other stuff, the training that you can do in between while Eddie was busy. So that was his first thing. And of course, Canelo's going to take his back on that. And then I think leading up to these other quotes, I think it's also with the fact that Canelo was saying that one of his favorite fighters is Tank Davis, and who that we know that is beefing kind of hard with Tank Davis, or is always throwing shots at Tank Davis. It's Ryan Garcia. Now then you see Ryan Garcia saying, you know what, I know Triple G will win. And I think it's just a little back and forth thing. And I could kind of see a little bit where maybe Ryan Garcia was saying is, look, I think what he meant was he tried to compare himself at that age, at that time. I don't think he meant like an overall career, because we obviously know an overall career, yes, like I completely side with Mayweather 100%. So I'm not saying I side with what Ryan Garcia said about him fighting Matthew Hatton. I'm just saying I kind of understand what he's trying to say. Is he was trying to make a comparison of where they were exactly at, where they were in their careers. But overall, to me, I think we already know who has the better accomplishments. And yes, like Mayweather said, hey, you know what? Once you accomplish the things that Canelo has accomplished, sit back and take the back seat and just kind of let it be. But until Ryan Garcia does the things that we want to see him do, it's funny to see. I feel like maybe in the future we might see some personal shit thrown out there. So all we gotta do is wait and see.
I'm a little disappointed in Canelo, man. I was kind of hoping that, because how fucking grimy the reporters are, bro. They're gonna ask some fucked up shit. You know what I mean? They're gonna try to bait you into giving them some shit. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I'm a little disappointed that Canelo didn't take the high road and say something nicer, or say, hey, that's something that I don't care to talk about right now. So I'm a little disappointed in him. With Ryan, I understand that he's hurt or whatever. But at the same time, he's got to take responsibility for his actions, clearly he had one of them mental things going. And to be honest, yes, it's a mental condition or whatever, but you still have to take responsibility for your weaknesses, because everything in this life is going to cost you something. You're going to have to pay for it later down the line. And that helps you learn the lesson, So with Ryan also, I wanted to say that him bringing up Canelo, it's two total different situations. Ryan Garcia had an extensive amateur career. Canelo didn't. So, it was very different. Canelo was learning on the job. So for him to bring that up, it really doesn't, it might make a lot of sense at first. And somebody might be like, oh, yeah, that's true, but it doesn't make sense in reality. If you go back to BoxRec, you'll probably see that, when that was happening, Canelo was fighting about 10 times a year. You know what I mean? He was very active. So even though he might have been fighting nobodies or whatever, he was very active in his career. So, could you imagine if Ryan Garcia was doing 5 fights a year, at 21? Even if it was only 5 fights a year, I mean, that would be something good. But Ryan isn't even doing nothing close to that. So I think he needs a reality check as far as that. But like I said, I'm still a little disappointed that Canelo didn't take the high road on that, and just let that one go, man. You can't win all these little battles with the novela type shit that George was talking about.
Dude, it's a losing battle, man. I want to give a shout out to El Pinchi Punch, who says it's astonishing. If you just came in, I think what he's referencing is the fact that every time we talk about Ryan Garcia, we're going to feature one of his baby mamas.
First off, bitch, mind your business. Bad bitch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So let's get back to this Ryan Garcia beef. You guys both make really good points. George, with that on your mic, that thing that you flipped, it makes noise now. If you could go back to it. There we go. That's perfect. Thanks, brother. Yeah, man. So, I agree with everything. And like you all said, man, I think it's a losing battle for Ryan Garcia, dude. Okay. You want to talk about what Canelo was doing at 20 versus what Ryan Garcia was doing. Yeah, we all kind of remember that Matthew Hatton wasn't the best opponent for him to win a world title. But if you're looking at the eye test, Canelo really was a worthy champion that needed to be crowned. If the WBC said, okay, this guy's good enough to be the next champ, if he beats his next opponent, well, I mean, we've seen based on his work at 154 pounds that was a good call. I mean, he had a very good career. He beat Trout, and he beat Mosley. He beat a lot of people, in that weight class. After he lost to Floyd, he did the 155-pound run, which was close, but then he went to 154, fought, what's his name? It's one of the Smiths, Liam McCallum. I can't remember which one. But he was a worthy champion, and we can't compare what they're doing at 23, which is the age Ryan Garcia is at now, right? 23, we all know what Canelo was doing. He was fighting the likes of Trout, fighting the likes of Floyd Mayweather, taking another soft touch maybe with in Angulo, and then going to fight Lara. Like Garcia can't even get close to that. And like Nopal said, this Ryan Garcia dude only fights like maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. He can't even keep up with the pace of a young Canelo. It's almost like they're fighting in a different sport or in a different league. Like you can't even really compare these two. So I think it's just a losing argument for Ryan Garcia, and he shouldn't even really go there.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to also say one thing is the way that Ryan Garcia phrased it, he made it seem like Canelo was more privileged than he is. And I don't even think that's the case. I believe that those type of opportunities would come to Ryan Garcia in a heartbeat because he has the potential to be a superstar, but he needs to just put in the work to get it. And unfortunately, he hasn't put in nothing close to that, to what Canelo was putting in at that age. So, it's bad for being delusional about that because I think that the WBC or any organization would give him title shots equal to what they were giving Canelo at that time.
And D-Style here says that Canelo was fighting veterans like Mosley. Exactly. And has Lion Ryan even fought a former champion yet? I don't think so, man. So, I mean, like I said, this is a losing argument for Ryan Garcia, and he needs to get his ass in the ring. Let's see what happens. He's actually fighting pretty soon here. And when he does, once he gets it out of the way, we'll see if he's really going to fight somebody like Tank Davis. I mean, if he does, I'm going to be satisfied with that fight. And I think it'll answer a lot of questions about one fighter or the other. I think it'll answer more questions about Ryan Garcia because I think we know what we have with Tank a bit. But I do like that matchup, because either way, whoever wins, I'll be happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, win or lose. I mean, if Ryan, like I said, win or lose between Tank, I mean, it's the fight we want to see. I would give him all the praises and props if he does fight Tank next after this Fortuna fight, even if he loses the Fortuna fight. I mean, if he loses the Tank fight. So
yeah. So we'll see what happens, man. And now it's time for our controversial rescore. We went back to check out Danny Garcia versus Mauricio Herrera. All right, now check this out, man. Like, this was in 2014, and I remember almost not putting up this fight. I remember that it was called a controversial decision, but I thought, well, I only want to put worthy fights up there. But when I went back and I looked, I mean, this is when Danny Garcia was in his prime, when he was hot. He was a unified champion. Okay, and this takes place in 2014. All right, I just have some facts here about this. Danny Garcia, this was his 5th title defense. All right, his 5th title defense. And he's coming off of wins of the likes of Eric Morales. He knocked out Amir Khan. And I remember everybody was a little shocked, but not that shocked. I mean, everybody knew he got knocked out by Breeders Prescott. But Khan was still doing good, and people thought he was going to win. And Danny Garcia had that awesome hook, and he just flattened Khan and put him out of his misery. Beat Morales again, beat Judah, beat Lucas Matisse, right? And Herrera, well, he had a 2011 win against Privognikov. That's his only notable win. Otherwise, he has freckled losses to Mike Alvarado and Kareem Mayfield. Okay, and this will be the last fight before Danny Garcia moves up to 147 pounds. So he vacated as a unified champion. And you can see here, he was the Ring Magazine champion as well. Okay, so like I said, I should have given Danny Garcia a little bit more credit for his 140-pound run when I was referencing this fight. It just kind of took me back, and I thought, oh yeah, he was hot for a little while, man. So let's talk about this fight. George, how'd you like this fight? Who'd you have winning? And do you consider it to be a robbery?
Overall, it was a good fight because, again, like you just mentioned, right now, like Herrera had like one notable fight against Ruslan Provodkanov, and Danny Garcia, against all odds, against Matisse. I think right, you just mentioned he fought Matisse before Herrera. I did not favor, or I didn't think that Danny Garcia would have been able to pull off against the Matisse fight, which he was getting his ass handed to him a little early on in that fight. And I don't know if it was a headbutt or if it was an eye injury that slowed down Matisse, and then from then on, or the famous slap that Danny Garcia's dad did to him in the corner, trying to wake him up. Woke him up. I remember that. I remember that vividly. I think it was like on the Mayweather undercard. But in this fight, it was the parade. Him going to Puerto Rico, going back to his roots. Even though I think from what I remember, his Spanish isn't that great. So yeah, I mean, you represent where your blood is from. So I remember again the parade, the shenanigans, whatever you want to call it, going into Puerto Rico. I remember some of the lead up, but as far as the fight, I mean, what I had, it was 8-4. When I finally tallied up, the 12 rounds. Early on, Herrera came out. He did, I think what they were mentioning in the commentating, for him to offset Danny Garcia, make Danny Garcia uncomfortable, because I even believe that Danny Garcia was a stationary puncher. Like, if you're trading with him, Paulie made a good point that he's not your typical counter fighter where he takes those half steps back to counter. Like, he kind of sits in the pocket a little bit and he lands in between your punches, and that's what he did against Amir Khan. Is in between Amir Khan and him exchanging punches, he landed a left hook. But in this, that's kind of what he was doing, was he was hoping to land in between those punches. But Herrera was moving, using an excellent jab. He was using what me and Ren were referencing. A fighter is using the pitcher approach, like a baseball pitcher. Like, you have your fast pitches, your slow pitches, you change your zones, you go high, low, you mix it up, you use everything you can in your arsenal. And I think that's what Herrera did in this fight. He used a pitcher's approach. You've seen him jabbed at the top, change speeds, he hit different zones, like head and the body. He made Garcia uncomfortable. Garcia had a couple of rounds. I think this was probably the less out of most of the fights that we've scored. I've only had 4 swing rounds, and for some reason when we've rescored other ones, it's usually like 6+ rounds that were swing. And the swing rounds actually were the rounds that I gave to Garcia. So, and it wasn't like he did really good work. I thought, at least in my eyes, I felt like Herrera did the better work. Again, I scored it 8-4 for Herrera. Was it a robbery? I'm going to say yes, it was a robbery. got the hometown cooking in Puerto Rico. I think one of the scores they did a scoring at the 10th round. It was like 78-74. Two judges had a 77-75 for Garcia, and then Herrera, they had him 77-75, which was kind of, I think, what myself and the commentating had, Paulie and Jim. Those are the scores that they had leading into that 10th round, and they even mentioned that they had it a wider margin for Herrera. So A4, 116, 114. I had this a robbery.
All right. One listed as a robbery. Thank you so much, George. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Danny Garcia was coming home, even though he's not really from well, I guess his blood is, right? But he wasn't born in Puerto Rico. He didn't speak Spanish. His dad doesn't even speak Spanish, but that's all right, man. It was a homecoming. The crowd was definitely in Danny Garcia's corner. I'll tell you that. Nopal, what'd you think about this fight, man?
I ended up scoring this fight 8-4. I gave Danny Garcia rounds 3, 7, 10, and 11. So I gave him 4 rounds, and it was pretty cool. You could see Mauricio Herrera doing a lot of feints, jabbing to the body, clinching, trying to work inside on the clinch. Yeah, and the funny thing about this fight for me was whenever they would mention that, because they were saying that Mauricio Herrera jokes about being pillow-fisted, basically, and then Paulie Malignaggi, of course, give it to him to be the one to jump in there and say, well, all punches hurt, that type of shit. So,
I know, right?
The punches that hurt you are because of concussions, concussive punches. And those are accumulated. Of course, it was him that was going to jump in there and defend Mauricio Herrera. He did it twice, and I thought that was hilarious. But this is one of those fights that, there was a lot of banner on YouTube because of it, because everybody thinks that this was a robbery. But unfortunately, you really have to be very observant to see all the good little things that Mauricio Herrera did, in this fight. You got to be real observant. And, every single time, Danny Garcia didn't really land that many punches, but when he did, the crowd went crazy. So, you could see why the judges were like, they robbed Herrera, basically. So, yeah, I think it was a robbery, too.
All right. And D-Style here says they're feeding Jose Benavidez Jr. to Danny. Dude is a one-legged man, and we're going to get into that here in a second, man. And so, Nopal, so do you classify this one as an official robbery then?
Yeah, I do.
All right. So now we can mark it as an official robbery, and I co-sign that. Like, we have a unanimous robbery. I also think this fight was a robbery, although I had the fight a little bit closer. I thought that you could potentially give Garcia 5 rounds. I gave him rounds 1, 5, 7, 10, and 11. And there were some rounds that I think that were up for grabs. I do think that there were some interesting dynamics in this fight. And you guys already broke it down great, so I'm not going to add anything to that in particular. Although I did feel like there were some rounds where, Herrera, being the visitor, being the foreigner, wasn't securing rounds like he should have in a way. Like, sometimes you got to understand where you're at and the circumstances. Like, should he have been surprised that he was going to get robbed with a performance like that? Like, it's hard to say. I mean, it's like Paulie was saying in the commentary, like, what he's doing is not pretty, but it's working. Like, that's kind of how I felt. Like, he was doing what he needed to do to, quote unquote, win the rounds. But Danny Garcia was also winning some rounds. He also had some power. Such an interesting dynamic, kind of a weird, awkward fight to watch. Like, hard to get into the rhythm. There was some suspense because, I enjoy watching these fights when we really don't know who is supposed to win this fight. So I enjoyed it in that sense, but I would never go back and watch this fight. But I did think there were some close rounds. And then I think that, Garcia could have won rounds, like Nopal said. I made this note too. Like, if you weren't paying attention, I mean, the judge should be paying attention, right? But if you weren't, you could conceivably give Garcia some of these rounds. And then, I don't know, I feel like in round 12, I gave it to Herrera, but, I felt like Herrera really should have tried to emphasize winning that round a little bit more. Is his responsibility to do so? Most people would tell you no, but I felt like maybe he should have, man. So I did enjoy this fight, watching it once. I'm glad that we can retire it. Dude, Deontay Wilder was on the undercard against Malik Scott. Everybody knows that was a fishy fight. Ponce de Leon was on this pretty interesting little undercard, like to go back and kind of just analyze. I was impressed with that. But yeah, I think we can mark this one down as an official robbery. You could see in this picture right here, his dad is really not too happy. I mean, he's always got a sour look, but you can tell he's all pissed off about it.
Like he's always smelling shit or something.
I know. And like we were mentioning, Danny Garcia is going to fight here pretty shortly against Jose Benavidez. Okay, so what do you think about this fight, man? A lot of people are not happy with the fact that Danny Garcia is fighting somebody who's basically got one leg. We've seen it multiple times. His leg doesn't seem to be getting any better, but Danny Garcia is saying, hey, I'm moving up to 154 pounds. I still got more in me, and I want to make my legacy by going to 154 pounds. George, what do you think about this?
I agree. Oh, yeah, I agree. The one-legged thing. Benavidez is still pretty competitive. I mean, we saw what he did against Terrence Crawford. He did pretty well. Not saying that he was winning that fight, but he made it pretty competitive. And I mean, call me crazy, whatever, but it is at 154. Danny Garcia has been inactive. I think when was the last time he fought? Maybe like 2-3 years ago. I think he fought. I don't remember who he fought, but it's been at least more than a year or two that he's fought. He's fought, and so I would favor. I don't know. For me, I just feel like I'm going to favor Benavidez a little bit on this because Danny is a pretty good boxer, but in his professional career, he's mainly just he pretty much focuses on trying to stay stationary to land his shots. And I mean, if it's obvious to us, I'm sure it's going to be obvious to the Benavidez camp as well that they got to be moving, jabbing. If anything, the Herrera fight would be the one to take a little bit of homework from and study from and see, because Garcia does still flash that, even though that was at 140. Now he fought at 147, and now he's fighting at 154. So there is, in a weird way, I feel like this is kind of like a crossroads fight. I think because, Garcia is claiming that he wants to reassess himself back into the boxing world and wants to continue his legacy. But I mean, he's enjoying life. I mean, I follow him and his family on social media. I mean, they're always celebrating. They're always, I mean, I hardly see any training videos, but it's always like their family, which nothing wrong with family. I love my family too. They got a good family dynamic, but he's enjoying his life. I mean, we really don't know how serious he is. He's going to be taking this second chapter into his boxing career, and especially against Benavidez. I mean, Benavidez, his last fight, he did lose, right?
It was a draw, I think.
Was
it was either a draw or like a gift decision. Like people were saying that this dude should retire, and then all of a sudden he's headed up to fight Danny Garcia.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, either way, like I think if Benavidez, okay, to the rescoring with Herrera, and I always said this, guys usually, especially like that in their career or like a crossroad, they always have that one great performance that they get up for, and I feel like the Herrera against Danny was that fight for him. Like he got up for this fight, he knew what was at stake, and he gave the best performance of his career. Maybe this is the same thing here in Benavidez, where he knows maybe this is the very end of his career, knowing that he has Danny. Maybe Danny's not 100% focused. Maybe Danny doesn't have that fire, that drive that he used to early on in his career, because he sees him enjoying his life, his real estate. I guess he has a barber shop. I know he has like his own music studio. So he's enjoying life, man. I don't know. It might be a little bit different, but I might be crazy. I might get shit in the chat, but I might slightly favor Benavidez in this. But it wouldn't surprise me if Danny Garcia is to get a knockout against Benavidez.
Interesting. So, side note, you follow the Garcia family. Huh? Have you seen the C. Angie twins, Danny Garcia's sisters, and their music videos and their Brazilian butt lifts and implants and fucking? It's quite
something like that. Yeah, I mean,
it's exactly like that.
Yeah,
I'm watching. I'm following. I kind of
cool.
I hate watching them.
But God, I hate watching this. No, but you know what? Real quick, that one girl that they're always with, that Malu Trevejo or whatever her name is, Ryan Garcia's known to have that one under his belt as well.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'm sure they all run in certain circles, but I did think the dynamics of I'm getting sidetracked. I was about to go into the whole lifestyle of the Garcias. Let me focus, but I do follow the Sayanji twins. Like I said, they upset me. Like, I don't know how you could be like a professional singer. You can't even sing that well And these girls, you figure you'd learn how to dance. They can't dance. They pretend like they're cute doing their little things, but like, you should really learn how to dance if you're trying to make it, but like I said, I'm getting a little sidetracked over here. And like I said, I'm hating a little bit. I want to give a shout out to Nando. Nando, what's happening, man? He says, this fight is why Herrera is a solid name on Virgil Ortiz's resume, which is a good point. He also says that Herrera and Jose Cepeda must have been separated at birth. I'm always confusing them. No, Paul, what do you think about all this, man?
I'm kind of excited for this fight, but as George said, Danny Garcia has basically become a studio boxer now. He hasn't shown the same dedication he did when he was at like 140, coming up at the earlier the smaller divisions. He had one of the best resumes at 140. He had a really good resume going into 147, and then all up until now, I didn't think he did so good versus Spence. I expected more out of him. He almost looked like he gave up in that fight, and wasn't even interested. And yeah, if you take a look at his lifestyle, I mean, he's distracted with a lot of stuff. Nothing wrong with enjoying your life, but it looks obvious that he's lost his drive to achieve, and in any other circumstances, this would be an easy ass fight. And yes, Benavidez might be a one-legged fighter. Yes, he got shot or whatever in the leg. So, in any other circumstances, if he was dedicated, this would probably be an easy fight. But like I said, the way things are, who knows? But I'm still excited for this fight. It should be a good one.
To me, like, I gotta be honest, like, I feel like this is just a way for Al Heyman to pay both these dudes. Like, Danny Garcia, he could say whatever he wants, but he wasn't even good enough to do anything meaningful at 147 pounds. To think that he's going to go up to 154 in a division like that and make some noise, like, I just don't buy it. Same with Jose Benavidez. Like, he must want the payday, or he must still have this hunger, but it's kind of sad that he's still fighting. Everybody was calling on him to retire, and I think it came from a good place. He's not mobile enough to be in there. I'm surprised he's getting cleared. Unless there's some new news, And the other thing too is, like, I just want to mention, like, Danny Garcia, if you look at, his resume, like, he does a good job of kind of extending his career by fighting washed Mexicans. Like, I don't really want to go there, but like, he did fight Morales. Okay. He fought Rios. He fought Robert Guerrero, and now he's fighting Jose Benavidez. Like, this seems to be a formula for Danny Garcia to extend his career, and it's not my money. Right. So I guess that's all right. But I mean, I probably watch it, but I mean, this fight really doesn't get me going. And George, I was thinking about this, man. Like, a fight with two fighters like this, with two records like this, if this fight was like a UFC fight, they'd probably be hyping this fight all up to craziness. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's these two guys. And I was just thinking about it, like, to me as a boxing match, this isn't exciting, but if this was like a UFC fight, I could see them hyping two fighters like this to fight each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I get that argument where, we're seeing in the UFC guys with more than like 5 losses getting praises. But then if you look at the type of fighter they are, if we look at boxing, right, if we look at Gabriel Salo, we know he's got almost 10 losses, but people respect and love to see him fight because he doesn't shy away from any competition, even though we know sometimes he's going to be outclassed or he might lose pretty big. Kind of the same thing I feel for like other fighters. I mean, for UFC, like Donald Cerrone, like, dude shouldn't be fighting anymore. Yeah, he's kind of like the boxing. He's kind of the UFC of Gabriel Salo, fighting everybody. Yeah, he loses, but he continues to show up, and he might not be the co-main event or the main event, because he was actually he fought this Saturday as a prelim. So kind of shows you, if they have you on a prelim and you're kind of out the door, this is kind of the very end of it. But it also shows exactly how hardcore the UFC guys really love their UFC fighters.
Definitely, man. And here Nando says that he's paying $5 this month for Showtime. So, their Meteor Boxing July schedule is worth exactly that. And I'll co-sign that. And what I want to discuss next is our next rescore. Man, we are almost done. After this, dude, it's the Canelo fights, and then we officially wrap it up. Here we go, man. Let's talk about what we have coming up next, y'all. We have Sergio Maravilla Martinez versus Martin Murray, which was live in Argentina. And, we have, we're not going to feature it, but Ariola's on the undercard. Man, I find myself being impressed with the undercards of fights in the past. You know what I mean? But this fight is worth getting to. I've seen it mentioned a few times. Now, I remember watching a little bit of it. It was a daytime fight, I believe. And I never watched it again. I remember Martinez kind of maybe getting knocked down or slipping a couple times towards the end. But people are saying this is a sneaky robbery fight that a lot of people don't talk about. George, do you have any recollection about this fight?
A little bit, just like you. I remember daytime watching it during the day. I do remember when it came down to the decision, it was iffy. I mean, like I would honestly, it'd be fun to go back to rewatch it because it would definitely refresh my memory. And then, honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't even know who won. I just remember there being some kind of controversy in this fight. So it's going to be refreshed again for me to rewatch this again. I didn't, usually when I watch those fights during the day, like I am 100% focused and I'm watching it. I must have had something going on where I wasn't able to watch who won, but I definitely remember it going back and forth. I remember the slips now that you mentioned it. And I think that's where it all started for Sergio Martinez.
That's right. After this, exactly. He goes to fight Cotto after this, and then he quietly retires, although he did make a comeback here, just a little while ago. So he's actively fighting, but he's fighting in Spain. It's no biggie. But yeah, no, I think he fought Chavez, had this fight. Nobody was really paying attention. Then he lost to Cotto, and then he quietly retired. No, Paul, do you remember this fight at all, brother?
I just remember the people saying that it was very controversial, and I think either guy wasn't like Martin Murray wasn't important enough to make a big deal about it, so people just quietly let it go. And of course, Martinez went to go fight Cotto and give up, basically sell his titles away because he needed the brace on his foot. I think
right
since the Chavez fight, that's when he started having problems with his knee. When he got hit by Chavez. Not trying to give him credit for it, but the man is old. You know what I mean? The man was already an old fighter. So that was going to happen regardless. And so I guess the fight wasn't important enough to make a big deal about it. And, he went in to fight Cotto. So that was that. It's a good fight to rescore since it was controversial.
Yeah, and this will be the second fight of Sergio Martinez, which we will rescore. So we rescored Sergio Martinez versus Kermit Cintron. That fight was declared a draw, and we all thought Sergio Martinez should have gotten that nod. But this is a different Sergio Martinez. He's on the downslide. He's a little bit immobile, and it's going to be sad to see like a great champion because he was actually a very good middleweight champion. If by chance, like you just maybe started paying attention during like the Mayweather Canelo era or anytime after that, which is fine. Like Sergio Martinez was a very formidable middleweight champion, and he gave us a lot of memorable nights. So this will be his last victory, or at least on record, it'll be the last victory of his before he quietly retires after losing to Cotto. So I'll be interested to go back and watch this one, but I'll be a little sad because I thought he was a great champion. And actually, I have a photo with him. He was a really nice guy. He took a photo with me when I went to go see Ariola versus Adamek in Ontario the week after he beat Pavlik. He was kind of on the inside and he was done taking photos and he started walking away. And I said, Mr. Martinez, and he could have easily made the choice to ignore hearing me, could have easily did it, but he turned around, took the photo with me, man. So real classy, and I was really happy to meet him. And he had a big old fist, you know what I mean? Not surprising, because he just painted up Kelly Pavlik. So kind of looking forward to this in a way, you know what I mean? All right. Well, we'll get back to you on this one. And let's get into our Fight of the Year segment. 1927. Okay, now we covered the 1926 Fight of the Year, and it was Gene Tunney versus Jack Dempsey. The first fight where Jack Dempsey was a long reigning champion, but kind of just like, not really too busy defending his belt, was super popular, super famous, while Gene Tunney was super active. Gene Tunney wins that fight, and I didn't mention this before, and I want to mention this now. It was the first fight in history in which the title went to the challenger by decision. The first heavyweight fight championship ever. Okay. So, and we mentioned this a little bit when we went back and covered Ali, but it was very rare historically to give the challenger the nod if it went to decision. Very rare, but the first fight was the first time in history. So they have this fight again. This time, they're headed to Soldiers Field, Chicago, Illinois. And looks like Gene Tunney's getting the A-side treatment. Not only that, he's getting the A-side purse, okay? So he's getting like a 2-to-1 lion's share, okay? So things have changed a little bit. But you could see them being friends, and when I was doing research, I looked into it, and they said they started getting friendly around the early 1920s. So like, right, maybe like before they fought, possibly, like it looked like they were starting to warm up to each other and they knew each other. I just want to show you this clip of them in the lead up. This is in the lead up to their second fight, just kind of being friendly with each other.
Cool.
Yeah, man, looking sharp, just chatting it up, man. I mean, pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to get into this also because I want to tell you, like, these two are friends and they remain friends. But the second fight does have some controversy, okay? So in this fight, it's called the long count fight, okay? So in the 7th round, Jack Dempsey, who's losing this fight, puts together a string of punches that knocks down Dempsey, okay? Or excuse me, Gene Tunney. And Gene Tunney takes a little while to recover, okay? And the count doesn't start right away because Dempsey doesn't go to the neutral corner, okay? And this is kind of a new rule at the time. When we watched earlier fights, like we did notice that like there was no like neutral corner. The opponent would just be standing over you, ready to clobber you. So this was a new implemented rule. It was actually implemented by both camps. Some people say that Dempsey requested this. Okay, so let's take a little look at this long count, this very controversial sequence, right? Which some people think that, if the count had started at the appropriate time, that maybe Dempsey could have won the fight because he would have had an opportunity to crack a wobbled Gene Tunney. Let's take a look at it right now. Is it playing for you guys?
No.
Shit. All right. Well, it looks like it's not playing. But anyways, let's talk about this fight a little bit more. The other thing I want to mention is the first $2 million gate in history. Also, the first fight was held in a 16-foot ring. It was held in a 20-foot ring in the rematch. Okay, so pretty interesting dynamics. It seems like Gene Tunney really did utilize his A-side privilege, and this fight was a year later. So Jack Dempsey's a little bit more fresh leading into this fight as opposed to how he was before in their first fight. So, George, what did you think about this fight in general, and how do you rank
it? I didn't know that about the size of the ring. I mean, it definitely played a factor in for Gene Tunney, like you said, A-side, and his style of fighting too, right? Like he boxed really well from the outside. That's what stood out to me the most about this rematch is he fought smart from the outside, like the old school style, the hands a little bit down by the chest, shoot the jab. And I like that. I like that kind of style of fight where you're not running, you're still in the pocket, you're using your jab, you're using your step, your lateral movements, and that's what you see Gene Tunney do in this rematch. And I can see why this was fight of the year. It was at the time when 1927, it was a big fight that everybody was excited for a rematch because they really wanted to see if Jack Dempsey can answer back in his rematch. He didn't win. Yes, the long count. I wish I would have counted how long it was, which I should have done.
13 seconds.
13 seconds. Okay. Which, and nowadays that's pretty common, right? It doesn't necessarily mean once you hit the ground, it's like 10 seconds. It's like, it goes based off how the referee gives you the count. And I think that's kind of what we see here too. And the neutral corner thing, it did seem a little controversial because it was kind of like going back and forth. I mean, it was a new rule, so maybe they weren't exactly sure what they meant or which corner he was supposed to go back to. Maybe that was a factor in it. I think why maybe it was considered a long count. But I mean, Gene Tunney did what he was supposed to do. He won. He came out. He did a great job. He fought his style. The 20-foot ring suited perfectly for him. Everything went his way. A-side, bigger purse, Chicago, Wrigley Field. That just lets you know how big this fight really was, and this is why it was considered fight of the year. It was at the time, it was the two best guys at the heavyweight division. Overall score, from A to F, I'm giving this like a B plus, A minus. I'll give it an A minus. I'll say A minus. only because of the long count. Like, I think if there wasn't really the long count and that was the whole controversy, this would be a great fight because you saw what Gene Tunney did in this as far as his style. He made Dempsey fight his fight.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, George. And Nopal, what'd you think about this fight, man?
I thought it was pretty good. I was impressed, Dempsey, he's over there feigning and clinching, and trying to get inside. It's crazy, I always thought only the new guys were over here doing all them clinches, man. But yeah, I thought I was surprised by that long count, but at the same time, the way I was looking at it is, come on, bro, you know the rules. You got to get to your side of the thing. But as you said, it was a new rule, I guess, that they had just put in. So, I noticed that when somebody gets, even on a knockdown, the veterans will take as much time as they can as the referee will give them. But on these, it seems like as soon as you get up, they with these guys, as soon as you get up, that's when you're ready to fight. They tell you that, to go ahead and fight right away. They don't like let you wait a little bit or anything like that. Whereas now, you can kind of get up and then just take the full count, and then they say, are you ready or whatever? Oh yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, it was interesting to see that. And I thought it was a good fight. I'm ready for the next fight. What's the next one? Next fight of the year.
We're going to tell you here in just a second, brother. But tell me, man, how would you rate this fight? Like, I mean, would you rate it from A to F? Like, what would you give it? I mean, would you have the homies over, put on some carne asada and watch this fight? What do you think?
Nah, I don't think so, man. I wouldn't understand this Charles Chaplin type of fight. Nah, man, I'd probably rate it a C. Yeah.
And what do you think about the knockdown? Did you have a chance to watch it? Well, I guess you did. And if you did, do you think those 3 seconds would have made the difference?
You mean yeah, I think so, because he was that hurt that it took him the 9 all the way, and you guys say it was actually 13 seconds, So I don't even know if he would have gotten up if it was like a normal count. But the whole thing is that, it's up to the referee to count as slow as he wants, That's how they do it, So, I don't think that. I think he would have. I think if he would have been able to get up, I think he would have got knocked out all the way on the next one, because he was still hurt, But that whole long count, it gave him enough time to recover.
Oh yeah, great stuff, Nopal. Well, thanks for joining us, man. The only thing I wanted to add to that is in regards to the long count. Tunney said that he had picked up the referee's count at 2. And like I said, I apologize that we don't have it, but you could easily find it on YouTube. If you have 13 seconds, check it out afterwards. He says, and he could have gotten up at any point after that, preferring to wait until 9 for obvious tactical reasons. Dempsey said, I have no reason not to believe him. Gene's a great guy. And like I said, they became great friends. I just want to highlight this real quick. So, I'm in the wine country industry. Okay. And so this table, right, is a table that I've had food on a few times. It's in this secret little area in this winery. And this table, you could kind of see some of the art. This is from the Prohibition era, and Jack Dempsey used to go and frequent the bar where this table was. So this bar has a little bit of history. You can kind of see how lewd it was. The Roaring 20s. This will be our last fight that we watched in the 20s. It was fast women, fast money, faster cars. Everything was new and everything was just rolling. And a lot of people say that Jack Dempsey embodied that, and that Gene Tunney represented the end of the good times, which kind of led to the Depression, right? People just kind of, try to make poignant points, So that's me hanging out over there with Jack Dempsey memorabilia. So it's kind of cool that I could present that to y'all, because it's like, oh yeah, I eat at the table sometimes, because I'm in, you know what I mean? And then like I said, they became great friends, and throughout their whole lives, and like I said, I wish I had more information for you, but I've limited my intake because I'm reading a book on Jack Dempsey now. Like I said, his story is so damn interesting that I simply had to just read a book on it. So I kind of limited my knowledge to what happens to Jack Dempsey. I also want to figure out what happened to Gene Tunney afterwards. This will be the last time that we see either of them. All right. So I want to give a farewell to both these great fighters. We've learned a little bit. And next, we'll be going to Max Schmeling versus Young Stribling, 1931. So we're going to be going to the 30s. This is the next fight that has good film. So we're going to be skipping some years. So we just want to give a shout out to all the fights of the year in between. But we're going to go with what we can see. I saw just a little bit of this, and this one looks like actually a good fight. And that's the other thing I wanted to say real quick is like, I find myself realizing that, back in the day, I think fight of the year could have meant like the biggest high profile fight of the year. At least that's how I feel about that last fight. Like Dempsey versus Tunney too. Like, I mean, it was still kind of a one-sided affair. Like there was a lot of suspense with that knockdown, but like it wasn't necessarily even fight. Although I do want to say that I think Dempsey made a better account of himself in that rematch, but I think Tunney was prepared for it. You see him clinching a whole hell of a lot more, moving around a whole hell of a lot more, staying out of the pocket a whole hell of a lot more. So he definitely had respect for Dempsey's power. As we can see, I mean, he was really a knockout artist. Great statistics. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, man. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Another one for the books.
That's right. Well, for the Al Chile crew, we are signing